Time Pod people, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good. I've been dealing with health issues lately, but I'm feeling a lot better, and that makes me happy.
Yay.
So before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there's going to be spoilers. You have been warned. Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
In this episode, we'll be covering chapters 20 and 21 of The Eye of the World, where all hell breaks loose with a mad dash through the streets of Shadar Logoth. The group gets split up, and Nyanaeve learns a secret about herself.
Ooh.
Chapter 20 is called Dust on the Wind, and the icon is the Party Trolloc.
All right, let's get into it. Here is a quick summary of Chapter 20 to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. With Trollocs in the city, the group can't stay, so they leave the safety of Moraine's wards and head into the streets of Shadar Logoth at night. Moraine and Lan get separated from the group by a tendril of Shadar, and Moraine informs the others that it will kill them instantly if it touches them. They have no choice but to split up, and she tells them to head to the river, and she and Lan will find them. Tom and the Emmonsfielders are quickly met by Trollocs, and they scatter in all different directions. Rand is chased by 3 Trollocs and a Myrddraal, but is safe when they get attacked by Shadar. He runs into Matt, and they manage to escape the city walls, only to have Tom barreling through behind them with Trollocs hot on his heels. The 3 of them race off toward the river together. Meanwhile, Perrin and Egwene find each other. With Trollocs nearby, they race out of the city and right off a cliff into the river. Perrin makes it across, but without his horse or any idea what happened to Egwene. Back to Rand, Matt, and Tom, who are chased onto a riverboat by the Trollocs. There's a chaotic battle on deck, and Rand is nearly killed, but the humans prevail and the boat sets sail. The captain, Bail Domon, is not thrilled by their unexpected appearance on his ship, but they convince him to let them pay passage and stay aboard. Rand and Matt use the coins Moraine had given them. The chapter ends with worry over their friend's fate and Rand's guilt that he didn't protect Egwene.
So they get separated as they start to exit the city. They know they have to leave because they hear all the Trollocs. And they get separated by Shadar pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's right away.
And so Rand accidentally becomes like the leader of the group.
Yeah.
For about 5 seconds until the Trollocs show up and surprise them, and then everybody scatters to the wind.
Yeah, I love how it says that Rand says, "this way," and then he heard like 5 other voices say the same thing.
Yeah.
Because they all run in different directions.
Like you do. But one thing I did like about the detail of the Myrddraal that we get here when they come in, they have a whip. Mm-hmm. And they're driving the Trollocs ahead of them because they're the bosses. Mm-hmm. But they're driving with a whip. And there's something about people who have a whip that drive other people that is just detestable. And it adds another level of like vileness to the Myrddraal. Yeah. So when they get killed by Shadar in like the next couple of pages after that, it just seems so much more satisfying. At least to me. I don't know.
Could be, yeah. So we get to see what Shadar does when it attacks the Trollocs. And this is what the book says. The thickening tentacles of fog swung uncertainly for a moment, then struck like vipers. At least 2 latched to each Trolloc, bathing them in gray light. Muzzled heads went back to scream, but fog rolled over open mouths and in, eating the howls. 4 leg-thick tentacles whipped around the Fade, and the half-man and its black horse twitched as if dancing, till the cowl fell back, burying that pale, eyeless face. The Fade shrieked. There was no sound from that cry any more than from the Trollocs, but something came through, a piercing whine just beyond hearing, like all the hornets in the world digging into Rand's ears with all the fear that could exist. So that's pretty horrifying.
Yeah, scared beyond all reason.
I mean, they're Trollocs and a Myrddraal, so, whatever. But that's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, even for a Trolloc.
Yeah.
Rand, and as Rand is like running and trying to get away from the Trollocs, he pulls out his sword because he thinks someone's there. It's the first time he's going to pull out his sword and intentionally try to kill somebody, and it's Matt. Yeah.
I want to say that Rand almost kills Matt several times throughout this series.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Somehow Matt's always in the way.
Only when he needs to be, apparently. But yeah, just when Matt and Rand have gotten out of the city and can take a breath, Tom comes crashing through, and they're running from the Trollocs again. And Rand and Matt and Tom make a really good combination through the rest of this series. Like,
yeah, I like that team of the three of them.
Yeah, because it's the right amount of sarcasm from Tom, and there's just a really good pair. Yeah, it's great.
Like Tom's sarcasm and Matt's foolishness,
are
a great match.
They really are.
So we get a POV switch. Yay!
Yay! First one of the series.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that really stood out to me about this series is that we do get different perspectives throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Especially back when I first started reading in the early 2000s, that wasn't something that I was very familiar with. So it really, really stood out to me that we get all these different perspectives. And I forgot how long it takes for it to happen.
Yeah.
You know, we're 20 chapters in, and we only get a few POV switches in the Eye of the World. The Eye of the World is actually pretty different compared to the rest of the series. Yeah, it's mostly from Rand's perspective. So I forgot how long it takes, because the rest of the series we see so many different points of view that I'm not thrilled about being stuck in Rand's head through the whole book.
Yeah, he's not my favorite. I mean, yeah.
But anyway, so we get a POV switch, and now we're from Perrin's perspective for about 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So he's looking at the gate, making sure that there's no Trollocs around. And I love how when Rand and Matt approached the gateway, they basically just walked right on through. Like, they didn't really hesitate. But with Perrin, he's sitting there studying it for like 5 minutes, trying to think of every possible angle before he proceeds. And I love that about Perrin. I love that he likes to solve puzzles and that he likes to think things through before he acts. It's a great, refreshing change from, like, Matt, for instance.
Yeah, he's the thinker of the three.
Exactly. And, I mean, he thinks to himself that, you know, people view him as slow-witted, but he's not. He's actually very smart. He just likes to be careful, which is why it's ironic and hilarious when Perrin rides right off the cliff.
Yeah, after all that careful consideration.
Like,
and
no matter how
off the cliff.
tense this scene is, like how tense this chapter is, that never stops being funny. He just gallops right off.
Yeah. And speaking, okay, so we've said this before, but I want to say it again. How strong is Perrin? I mean...
Oh, I know, right?
He's strong enough to be able to swim across the river fully clothed, dragging his axe. So he's got his boots, he's got all of his clothes on, and this axe, which is no small feat.
Right.
And he swims across the river. Now, the Arenelle River is a major river.
Yeah.
A lot of rivers feed into it. So this thing is fast-moving, and it is wide.
Yeah, it's a major thoroughfare river.
And we find out later that the only reason Egwene was able to make it across is because Bella pulls her.
Yeah.
So Perrin, all by himself,
manages to swim across.
Exactly. So, wow. Lots of strength there. And then, after this really great time away, we cut back to Rand and Matt and Tom. And there's this moment here where, like, Matt puts an arrow through the eye of a Trolloc.
Right.
And what struck me this time as we read it, previously we had this little training session going on with Lan and the boys, and the boys all showed the really good shots with the bow and arrow. So but Lan makes a snarky comment of, yeah, well, try it in the heat of battle. And I just want to note that here, in the dark, off of the back of a horse, on the run, Matt shoots the Trolloc in the eye with an arrow. Our Two Rivers boys know how to use a bow and arrow.
Yes, they do.
Just saying.
Quite effective. So, Tom loses his best knives, saving Rand and Matt from the Trollocs that were chasing them.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk about Tom's character, because he was clear of the Trollocs. Like, he came up behind the Trollocs. He totally could have gotten away, because the Trollocs were definitely after the boys.
Right.
They weren't really interested in him. So he could have been like, peace out, hombre, and like gone off, ran off to safety and had been fine. But he didn't. He chose to stay. Mm-hmm. And it's so nice that when everyone gets separated, that Matt and Rand have an adult with them. Because Tom is dead useful when it comes to protecting them. He knows what's up. Like, Tom knows all about politics. He knows how to use those knives. He's a dangerous man. And so he's great. Whereas, Perrin and Egwene are completely alone, lost in the wilderness. Rand and Mat are safer because they have Tom.
Right.
So they get chased onto the boat. And it's total chaos.
Yeah.
There's, Trollocs everywhere. People are confused. People are fighting. And Trolloc knocks the breath out of Rand.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out that this is the second time in a matter of hours that Rand has had the breath knocked out of him. Because first it was with Mordeth in the treasure room.
Yeah,
and he recovers. And then here on deck. I don't know if you've ever had the breath knocked out of you, but I have. It happened one time when I was like 10 years old, and I very clearly remember it many, many years later. I thought I was going to die. It was terrible. It was so uncomfortable, and it was really hard to recover from. So poor Rand has already had this experience once today. So this time it affects him a lot more. He's seeing stars, and he is 100% convinced that he is going to die.
I never noticed that before. I never thought about how close proximity that happened. Like, I've had the wind knocked out of me before, so
it's painful.
I used to think that this was just, Mat and Rand are still level 1 characters and they haven't leveled up enough. But, to use a video game term.
Tough.
But yeah, I didn't realize
it makes
twice
sense.
in a row.
He's a farmer, so he's fit. He has to chop wood and he has to carry things, and so he's not a weakling. He's not Perrin,
right?
but he does have some muscles. He's not a small guy. So he's got a certain amount of stamina and a certain amount of strength, so that he can take a beating to a certain extent. It gets better as Lan trains him up more.
Right.
But he's having a bad day.
Yeah, thanks for connecting that dot. I never noticed that before. So Rand thinks he's about to die.
Right, convinced.
And suddenly the ship, here's a little bit. It says, the ship lurched and a boom swung out and caught the Trolloc across the chest. So...
And knocks the Trolloc off the boat.
Right. So, and when we had been talking about this, I don't know if everybody knows what a boom on a boat is, but if you ever imagine a sailboat, there's that piece of long beam that the bottom of the sail attaches to that swings back and forth across the deck as the wind shifts.
Oh, okay.
So that's what the boom is.
Okay.
And it's what flings across the ship, and that's a really huge, big piece of wood.
Yeah.
No, that Trolloc goes flying.
Right, totally.
Saving Rand's life. So, question. And I'm pretty sure I think I know what the answer to this is, but is Rand channeling here, and that's why the boat shakes?
Probably.
Okay.
I think that, he probably did channel, because there's something that happens in a couple chapters, which is probably channeling sickness. Do you remember when he's up on the rigging? And
that's why I thought it was too, because he's crawling all the way up on the mast, and he's
Tom thinks he's going to break his neck
on the rigging, and it's like, what are you doing?
He's kind of giddy and high again, like he was before.
Exactly.
So I don't remember any other instance that could have been channeling that would make him have that channeling sickness. So this probably was channeling.
Okay. So I'm not crazy. Yay.
No, you're not. Okay, so speaking of another question. Florin Gelb, is he a dark friend, or is he just a weasel? I know he comes back, but I can't remember if we get clarity on that.
He comes back in the Shadow Rising and does some weird shenanigans trying to, fight. He's just a weasel.
Yeah, I know... Eganin, is that how you pronounce her name?
Yes, Eganin / Mistress Lewin.
Yeah. I know she hires him much later. And I think before that, Rand runs into him again and he causes trouble. So I know he's troublesome. He's this weaselly loser of a person. That's obvious. But is he actually a dark friend or
No.
just a weenie?
No, he's just a weenie. This
Okay.
is another one of those characters like Bornhold who isn't necessarily a bad guy. He's just a bad person. He's not a black hat.
Right, like he's
just
not black and white evil, but he's
just
terrible.
He's a weasel and a terrible person, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then enter Bail Doman,
Yay!
lovable smuggler and burly scamp.
Okay,
I like
so
him.
I really like him, and for some strange reason, since I started reading the series, I've always imagined him as Han Solo, or rather what Han Solo would be like if he were a sea captain with a pirate accent and slightly overweight. Okay, so he's nothing like Han Solo, but he would have shot first.
Okay, that is a very different version of Star Wars than I remember, but all right. So Rand and Matt lose the coins that Moraine gave them because they need to pay passage. Because, as Doman says, he wouldn't let his aged grandmother sail without paying passage.
Nope. Everybody pays.
And we'll learn a little bit more about what that means in the next chapter.
Yeah.
And then also, I want to mention, so Doman thinks that the Trollocs are after him.
Yes.
Because they, like, I think he was in Saldea. Yeah.
Correct.
He was in Saldea, and he had trouble with them, and he feels like they've chased him all the way down south.
Right.
And they are after him, we find out.
Yes, we do. Because he has a piece of what he thinks is just a collector piece of Quindalar, one of the strongest substances in the entire universe.
Right.
But it's not just a collector's piece. It's an actual seal to the Dark One's prison.
Right. So here's my question. How do the Trollocs know that?
You know, I've thought about that a few times over the years, and the only explanation I could come up with that makes sense is that Ishmael or one of the Free Forsaken, maybe Lanfear, maybe someone else, knew where this particular seal was, and they've been watching it because they want to break it. They want the Dark One to be able to get out. It's a seal to his prison. So one of the Forsaken must have known where it was, and that Bail Doman came into possession of it.
And we're thinking probably Ishmael because it's book 1.
Most likely it's Ishmael. He's the only one we have, yeah.
Are the rest of the Forsaken out yet? Or some of them?
Some of them are. I think Lanfear is definitely out. I believe Semiurge might be out because she's over in the Shanshan Empire doing stuff.
Okay.
And there's so I don't think all of the Forsaken are out, but I do think maybe 3 of them, possibly 4.
Okay.
But that's just my own headcanon. I don't really have any evidence.
And
to back
they're
that up.
all out by the end of book 2 or by book 3? I know by book 3 they're all out.
By book 3 they're definitely out.
So
possibly the
sometime
end
maybe
of book
during
2.
book 2, that's when they are all out?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yay, answer your question?
Kind of.
So Rand feels responsible for not protecting Egwene.
Right.
And Tom and Rand have this great moment where Tom tells Rand that he did everything he could, and I don't want to detract from the awesomeness of that conversation that he and Tom have. But Rand is kind of stupid. It specifically here, but for the whole series, for the same reason. What bothers me is that Rand does not allow Egwene agency for her choice to leave the Two Rivers.
Right.
He only sees his failure to protect her.
Right.
He doesn't consider that she may have been able to rise above the adversity of the situation without him. So again, you know, this is one of those things that when I first read the series 20 years ago, I saw things in a certain way, and this I just kind of went over. Like, totally, he promised he was going to protect her, absolutely. But now that I'm reading through this, it kind of bothers me because Rand is so dead set on she needs my protection. She can't do anything without me, and it takes away from her choice to actually come.
I think it's common for young men, especially nice guys, like good, well-meaning young men, to have a white knight syndrome.
Absolutely.
Where they feel like, you know, they kind of have old-fashioned ideas of gender.
Chivalry and
exactly. You
yeah.
know, like it's a man's duty to protect the woman, and you know that's what good men do. And I think especially for young men, that's something that's just the view of how they see the world. And the problem is that Rand takes this to an absurd degree.
Yes, he does.
It becomes a huge problem throughout the series, like especially later in the series when he's got a stupid list.
Yeah, that list is one of the reasons I don't like Rand. He just, every time a woman dies, he adds her name to the list, and he keeps torturing himself with this over and over again.
So much so that he puts himself and others into danger.
Yes.
Because he refuses to see women as equals.
Yes.
Like, as positive on women that Jordan is in this series, and I think that he is positive on women as a writer, Rand is so frustrating because even though he does respect women, he doesn't see them as equals. He takes away their agency all the time. Like the way he acts with the maidens.
Yes.
You know, it's like...
Yeah, the Maidens of the Spear, like, when we get out to... when we finally get into book 3 and 4. The Maidens of the...
Later than that.
But...
That's like 5.
But we find out that for the Ale culture, like, the women fight alongside the men. They carry the spears.
Yeah.
And Rand just can't reconcile that. And every time one of those maidens who chose to live that lifestyle dies, he blames himself for letting a woman die.
Yeah, and it's like he's taking away their choices. He's taking away their agency. It's like, this is the life that they have chosen, and he's saying that he knows better. And I totally agree with you. It's very, very frustrating.
I don't like to get ahead of the series and all that when we go through all these, but this is something about Rand that really bothers me, especially now that I'm older. It's like... Yeah,
and I agree. Like, when I first read the series back in 2003-ish, 2004.
I think that's when I introduced you to it, yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Let's go 2004. It didn't bother me back then, you know. At least not as much. Like, later it did, but here in book 1, like, his feelings of responsibility over Egwene didn't really bother me.
Yeah.
But now you're right. It's a symptom that's indicative of a deeper issue that does become a problem later.
Yeah. So there's that rabbit trail. Sorry for going down.
Come on, Rand, get your shit together.
Absolutely. And that brings us to chapter 21. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru is brought to you by Shadar Security, the pride of Shadar Logoth. Worried about hordes of shadow spawn plaguing you at night? No problem. With Shadar's security system in place, Trollocs will fear to come close. Myrddraal driving them towards you? No problem. At the slightest touch, Shadar causes an agonizing death they won't soon forget. Ha ha. Any place with Shadar Security is a place where Trollocs fear to tread. Shadar Security. You should probably stay indoors.
Chapter 21 is called Listen to the Wind, and the icon is Moraine's staff.
This chapter may as well be called You're a Wizard, Nyanaeve. So we get another point of view shift, and now we see Nynaeve's perspective. It's the next morning, and she wakes up alone in the woods. After the initial attack the previous night, the Trollocs did not seem too interested in her, and she has to admit that Moraine was probably right that they are after the boys. She sets out to find the others and comes across Moraine and Lan's camp. She puts her wilderness skills to use to eavesdrop on them and learns a few things until Moraine senses her and she is discovered. Moraine then tells Nyanaeve that she is also able to channel. At first, Nyanaeve dismisses this as a flat-out lie, but Moraine lays out a compelling argument, and she eventually has to admit that Moraine is right. There is no time for Nyanaeve to properly process this bombshell with the boys missing. Moraine decides to chase after the two who lost their coins, figuring that they're probably in the most danger and need her more. Nyanaeve decides to go with them, and this unlikely trio heads off, but not before Nyanaeve silently swears vengeance on Moraine for getting them all into this mess.
Nyanaeve is so good with her survival skills.
Yeah.
Like, so after all this chasing, she settles into a hollow of trees for the night, and that gives her a little bit of cover from being seen. The leaves on the ground around her are all dry, and this will give her some warning if someone is trying to sneak up on her. Her back is to the tree where it'll be protected, while she faces the threats that would come from the front. And she has her horse's reins wrapped around her wrist just in case the horse moves, and she'll know.
Right.
And it won't go anywhere.
Right.
So all of this was her decision after she's worn down from running, from a horrible night before, and all the big ordeal of going through what all that was.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say in summary is Nynaeve's amazing.
She is. Although Nyanaeve berates herself for not staying up all night on guard against the Trollocs.
Right.
Which is a fair point. But this just illustrates that she's just as harsh a critic of herself as she is of anyone else. We've talked about that before. That she keeps just as high standards for herself as for anyone.
Interesting thing, like the Trollocs turned away from Nynaeve mid-hunt.
Right.
Because they know the smell of who they were after, and it wasn't her. Mm-hmm. And I find this really creepy.
Yeah, totally.
So Trollocs are not human, so it makes sense that there's a sense of smell that they have that like animals do. But it seems so much more predatory to be hunted based on your scent instead of the signs that you leave and being tracked by like the trail that you leave physically.
Yeah.
It's all your scent, and that's just...
It's creepy.
That's really creepy.
Totally. So Nynaeve is really smart, and she comes up with a solid plan to try to find her people, all the way to Tar-Valon if need be. She thinks about that she's going to follow the river to see if she can find any tracks of them. And if not, she'll go all the way to Whitebridge. And then from Whitebridge, she can take a road to Camelin, and then if she has to, go all the way to Tar-Valon. And even though she's never been any further away from home than the boys had, she knows exactly what to do. Like, she comes up with this plan super simply.
Yeah.
And it's easy to forget how inexperienced Nynaeve is, because she's so damn competent.
Yeah.
Like, she hasn't been out in the world. She's just as backwards and hayseed as the boys are.
And she's only a few years older.
Yeah. I mean, she's... What, 25, 26?
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's not that old. But she's just so good at everything that it's easy to forget that she's inexperienced.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I also really like the part where Nynaeve feels vindicated that Lan could also not tell anything from the metal tracks. She's so funny. Like, she has such a chip on her shoulder. She always has something to prove, even if it's just made up in her head. But she does crack me up.
We have more of Robert Jordan's trademark foreshadowing by 2x4 as Moiraine starts to list off all the possible ways that the Trollocs could have been amassed in the area that are impossible. She's wrong about every single one of them.
Right.
She just doesn't know it yet. So the ways are open. Check. Forsaken or loose. Check. People have discovered how to travel. Well, not necessarily people. Like the Forsaken, if they're loose, they're traveling. So it'll be soon for everybody else. Yes.
So one of the things that Nynaeve overhears is that Moiraine is able to track the boys with the coin bond.
Right.
So she knows that one is alive and across the river, and we find out later that that's Perrin. And she sensed faint traces of the other two, but they faded away because the bond was broken. And, of course, that's Rand and Mat going downriver. So that's why it was so important for them to keep their coins, because that's how she could track them.
Right. Nynaeve is impressing Lan with her woodsman / survival skills. She's able to sneak up on Lan and startle him so much that he drew a sword, which of course makes Nynaeve feel smug.
That says a lot. Not only is Lan a warder, but he's a borderlander.
Yes.
Being able to sneak up on him is huge.
It really is.
She kind of deserves to feel smug about that.
Yeah.
That's an accomplishment. Moiraine just drops the bomb that Nynaeve can channel like it's nothing. And of course, it doesn't go over very well. For Nynaeve, it's a vicious slander against her character.
Yeah.
For Nynaeve, finding out that she can channel feels like finding out she has evil inside of her. She's part monster.
Yeah.
She feels dirty and dangerous, like her whole life has been a lie. Unlike Egwene, who was excited about it because it confirmed Egwene's suspicion of how special she already knew she was. But for Nyanaeve, she's devastated. She feels like her life is over.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciate about Nyanaeve here, and I think it might be the reason I like Nyanaeve and Matt both, is that she wears her emotions on her sleeves. Mm-hmm. And we hear her, like, think things and, like I really can see myself sometimes as Nyanaeve. Yeah, I want to hit people too. I don't, because it's not the right thing to do. Nyanaeve has that Nyanaeve has that same level of restraint that, you know, you can't actually hit people. She just reminds me of a friend of ours who kind of taught me this phrase that I don't get enough credit for my restraint.
Yeah, you don't actually think of Nyanaeve and restraint in the same sentence, but if she acted on all the impulses that she had, she'd be clowning people left and right.
that stick would get a lot more. Heads would be beat. Yes.
You feel that way too? You just
Absolutely.
want to smack
people? Yeah, but I don't because, you know.
Because use your words.
Use my words, yes.
So you and I have already talked a lot about this chapter and what Moraine explains about channeling when we talked about Rand touching the source for the first time.
Yeah.
Everything that we discussed about desperate need being the catalyst and then the channeling sickness. So we don't have to rehash it. But there's a couple other things. So Moraine explains that an affinity develops and you can sense someone that you have healed. So Nyanaeve went straight to the inn in Berlin where Perrin and Egwene were.
Right.
So Moraine, says, so you must have healed one of them. And then Nyanaeve thinks back and she realizes that she had been able to sense people in Emond's Field when they would approach her, like from behind before seeing them, when it was someone that she had miraculously healed.
Right.
And Moraine lays out all these things and Nyanaeve realizes that she's experienced exactly what Moraine is saying. So Nyanaeve's channeling story is when she was an apprentice, Egwene had breakbone fever, and she didn't realize that the wisdom at the time had everything under control, and she thought that Egwene was going to die.
Right.
So Nyanaeve started to cry over her because she used to babysit Egwene, so she had a connection with her.
Yeah.
And an hour later, the fever had broken, like days ahead of schedule. And so the wisdom was sure that Nyanaeve had given Egwene something because the healing was like miraculous, which of course Nyanaeve hadn't. And then a week later, Nyanaeve came down with fever, but then it was suddenly gone a few hours later. And she experienced some other symptoms too, like other channeling sickness symptoms, but they stopped after a couple months. And so she's realizing that Moraine's right because she laid out everything that Nyanaeve has experienced.
Something that struck me this time around is this bit of Moraine's conversation with Nyanaeve when she says that Nyanaeve says that she would know if she could channel.
Uh-huh.
So here's what it says. Of course, you do not know, Moraine said smoothly. Why should you even suspect? All your life, you've heard about listening to the wind. In any case, you would soon as announce to all of Edmund's Field that you were a dark friend as admit to yourself, even in the deepest recess of your mind, that you have anything to do with the One Power or the dreaded Aes Sedai.
Right.
So when we're young, so much of what we believe is and what we expect out of life is learned from our environment. Like our family that we're raised in, the community we grew up in, every part of society around us informs our opinions on what is good and what is bad.
Right.
So Aes Sedai, they're human. Therefore, they're capable of both great evil and great good. But they're not creatures of the Dark One like Nyanaeve has been conditioned to think.
Yeah, like we've already talked about the prejudice that the Emond's Fielders have against Aes Sedai.
Right. And, it's interesting that the wisdoms, I say that in quotes with my fingers because you can't see, the wisdom's big conflict for the next couple of books is going to be reconciling this thing that she has discovered about herself with what she has been raised to believe about that very thing.
Yeah.
So, what struck me this time around is that this is similar to what it must be like to realize that you're gay or you're trans in an environment where it's unacceptable or even inconceivable.
Right, like in a super conservative or possibly religious upbringing.
Right. Channeling is not something that Nyanaeve could help, and she did not choose it for herself. And she deals with a lot of self-loathing for the first few books because she's has to accept this new reality that she didn't choose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's my revelation this time around. Like, it just kind of popped into my head.
Moraine tells Nyanaeve that she's lucky it didn't kill her, the ability to channel, and it would probably kill Egwene. And Nyanaeve disagrees and says that what she experienced couldn't kill anyone, and if she could learn to control it, then so could Egwene.
Right.
But then Moraine says that 3 in 4 girls who are not found and trained die. And she explains like what that means, like what kind of death that they have. Mm-hmm. And then Nyanaeve realizes that she actually knows of 2 other women from the Two Rivers area. Both of them were apprentice wisdoms who died the way Moraine said.
Yeah.
So again, Moraine keeps laying all this stuff out, and whatever denials that Nyanaeve has, she keeps realizing, oh, yeah, that did happen, or yeah, I've heard about that. So Moraine is chipping away all of Nynaeve's resistance.
She finally lets go of her last stubborn denial and admits the truth, but asks Moraine to keep it secret.
Right. Yeah, she doesn't want anyone to know.
Then Moraine decides to go after the boys who lost the coins.
Right.
As opposed to...
Yeah, they need to decide which way to go, and she decides that, they need her help more.
Right.
So they're trying to decide if Nyanaeve is going to come along. And Nyanaeve is so easily manipulated in this moment. She's vulnerable, and Moraine is able to use reverse psychology really easily.
Yeah.
To get her to do exactly what she wants. And so Nyanaeve and Egwene are not Moraine's priority.
Right.
But she still has no intention of letting women that have that much potential and the power slip through her fingers.
Absolutely
She'll do it if she has to. Like, if it's between Egwene and Nyanaeve and the boys, she's going to go after the boys because that's her goal. But she's still, like, she wants Nyanaeve and Egwene. Like, she's not going to easily let them go. So she may have given Nyanaeve the choice, but it was a sham.
Yeah.
She knew if she said, oh, you don't need to come, that Nyanaeve would be like, I'm coming.
Yeah.
And sure enough, she does.
Yep, absolutely. Plays right into it. So we get this bit with Nyanaeve and Lan. Nyanaeve is so sure that Lan is mocking her.
Yeah.
Again, she has a huge chip on her shoulder and is always trying to prove herself.
Yeah.
So she creates this entire competition with Lan in her head and thinks he's gloating or mocking when he's just being Lan.
Definitely. Yeah. Nyanaeve needs to get over herself sometimes.
Yeah.
She has a lot of insecurities. And so she goes to pretty far lengths to make up for them. So she ends the chapter swearing vengeance on Moraine.
Yeah.
Kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a major motivating factor for her for the first several books. Mm-hmm. Like we talked about her self-hatred over her ability, and she uses this excuse of needing to learn to channel so that she can get revenge on Moraine.
Yeah.
She uses this excuse for several books. Way longer than it makes any sense. She's still like, oh, well, I still have to get vengeance on Moraine.
Well, because, as long as she's hanging on to that, she's not abandoning, her life as wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. And it just, while she's still working out her internal issues as far as accepting that she's able to channel without all of the prejudice and her preconceived notions, it's an excuse. But, sometimes we need to do that. And, Nynaeve is really good at lying to herself.
She is.
But that's our girl. She's hopelessly flawed and endlessly endearing.
Yeah. And that ends chapters 20 and 21 of The Eye of the World.
Yay.
In next week's episode, Perrin and Egwene find each other, and then wolves!
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Maybe leave us a positive review. It really does help us get to the top of the search results.
Yeah.
You can tweet us at WhatPodThru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com. Tell us your thoughts on anything we've covered today. We would love to hear from you.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com and at Twitter. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.